Hey everybody, Heather here. And this week's topic for our 6 weeks challenge is gut health. It's kind of a trendy thing in the last couple of years, but I feel like most people have no idea what it is. So I have asked my sister-in-law, who is kind of a specialist in gut health. Her sister is also a nurse and also does this business with her. And so together, between the two of them, I've learned a lot in the past couple of years about gut health. And so I wanted to just ask her some questions so that we can be educated on the topic and know what will work best for us going forward. So this is Chelsea, if you want to introduce yourself.
Heather, you're so sweet. I feel like I learned so much from you. That's like the cool part of this whole journey. And I know we'll share some of that today, but just being able to learn from other people who are maybe a step ahead of you or have experienced different things on the journey. You don't have to be a medical expert or have any kind of degree, but we can educate ourselves on different things. So I just have loved learning from you and from all the other people that are in my life who are one step ahead of me, in different areas. So I'm happy to be here to share what I've learned.
I love that. And I, as usual, just finished working out, was going to shower, but it didn't work out for me. So you guys get the normal Heather you're used to. We're going to start off today by just defining what gut health is, because like I said, I feel like we hear a lot about it in articles and on social media, but I feel like most of us, I know I didn't have any idea what gut health was. I was like, why does my stomach need health? I'm confused about this. So Chelsea, what is gut health?
That is a great question. I'm so like you. Several years ago, I couldn't have told you what gut health was to save my life. So I'm a mom of two little girls. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I really started this whole journey of gut health because of my girls, because I wanted to learn to be an advocate for their health. And what I have kind of learned, I'll probably share a little snapshot of kind of their story and how we kind of got involved in this world. But what I've learned over the past couple of years is that gut health really is like the basis and the root of a lot of health issues that we have going on. Most of us know that we have good bacteria and bad bacteria, or sometimes we tell our kids that we have good germs and there are bad germs. And the goal is for those to be in balance, right? Like we want the good guys to outweigh the bad guys. But because of our traditional American diet, because of high sugars, processed foods, birth control, over-the-counter meds, all of these things that are so ingrained and needed. I mean, I'm all about Western medicine. I'm all about those tools that help us to live our best life. But because of those things, the scales have kind of tipped in most of our microbiome and most of our gut health, and those microorganisms are out of balance. Something I learned a couple of years ago that blew my mind is that our cells in our body are outnumbered 10-to-1 by the microorganisms that live on our skin and in our bodies and in our guts. And the majority of those are in our gut. And so they don't just have an effect on our bodies, but they really control a lot of the things that are going on in our bodies, our mental health, our metabolism, our energy levels, chemical reactions that are going on in the body, all are impacted and in a lot of cases controlled by the microorganisms that live on our body and in our body. So gut health in a nutshell is we want those good guys and bad guys to be in a balance. And we want the good guys to be outweighing the bad guys. But for a lot of us, because of all those factors I just listed, they've gotten out of balance. And when they're out of balance, they start to have a domino effect in our body and can cause a lot of things, can cause a lot of symptoms that we don't often tie back to gut health. Because like you, Heather, I was like, what does diarrhea or constipation have to do with my mental health or my metabolism, when in reality it plays a huge effect.
Thank you. Yeah, that is true. I had no idea that what happens in your stomach affects the rest of your health, which brings me to my next question. So for those of us who may not ever have thought about our gut health before, but who may have some of these symptoms that we wouldn't traditionally relate to our gut, what does that look like if your gut health is poor versus if your gut health is good? Well,
yeah. So this is something that I really had to educate myself on a lot because, and I'll share a little bit of my story right here. So we kind of got involved in this world of gut health. Emma's 9. So I guess 7 years ago, when we first were introduced to this, she was a baby who struggled with chronic eczema and very low functioning immunity. She was regular as the day is long. She was 2 poops a day kind of girl. She didn't have any gut issues, but something was wrong with my baby. Heather can attest. I mean, she was sick 2 or 3 times a week. She was on 5-6 rounds of antibiotics her first year of life, and it just kind of spiraled from there. And so when she was 2.5, I just kind of reached the point where I was like, this is just not, this being normal is just not acceptable for us anymore. My baby is breastfed. She's eating all organic foods. I felt like I was doing all the right things, but something was wrong with her. Babies are not supposed to be sick like that. So we finally sought out the guidance of a functional doctor. And if you're not familiar with a functional doctor, he's simply an MD. He's a regular doctor who takes a more holistic approach to health. And they really seek to get to the root of the symptoms that we're dealing with. And I'll never forget sitting in his office. And he told me, after he had kind of evaluated her and taken some time with us, he said, she has Candida yeast overgrowth and she has poor gut health. And I remember telling him, she doesn't have bathroom issues. Like, that's not why we're here. And that's when he started to talk to me about the connection of our microbiome and those microorganisms in our body, and how specifically, but for her, because she had been on so many antibiotics as a baby, it wiped out her gut health. So when we take an antibiotic, we need those sometimes when we have strep and we have an infection. I'm so grateful for the antibiotics we've had, but it not only wipes out all of the bad, but it also wipes out all of the good. And so I want you to think about all of us as adults now. How many antibiotics have you been on? How many of us have been on birth control? How many of us take over-the-counter meds? How many of us intake more sugar than we should on the weekends, or intake alcohol? All of those things are good parts of life, but they affect us. And so he went on to explain to me, and I've learned so much about how those organisms have such a huge role on everything going on in our body. I didn't know that 90% of our serotonin and our melatonin are actually produced in our gut. That is our happy and our sleepy hormone. And we know that when our mental health is off and when our sleep is off, it affects everything. It affects all the other hormones in our body. So those are just a couple of the things that he started to share with me. And skin issues specifically, one of the things she was struggling with, that is a result of something off in your immune system. So there are just outward red flags. If you're struggling in your mental health or with your skin or even with autoimmune issues, all of those things are so strongly tied back to our gut health, because everything it's kind of the center of us. When you think about your melatonin and your serotonin, if those two things are out of whack, so is everything else.
Right.
Yeah. So there's just such a tie there. And I would encourage you to, just like I did, go do a Google search. That's how I started this and started to empower myself. As I started Googling all the symptoms that she and I were both dealing with. And I would Google eczema and gut health, eczema and Candida, chronic exhaustion and Candida, sleep and gut health. That's how I really started to get to the root and educate myself. The information is out there. It's free information. We just have to learn to be our own advocate.
I think that's so important. And that's one of the big things we, as you know, focus with our challengers and with our company in general, is for nutrition. Even we can give you the tools, but eventually we want you to not need us anymore. And that's because you've learned enough to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you and move forward, which may not be the best business model, but it is important to me that everybody educate themselves. And so I know for me, I'm I've always been a pretty healthy person. I think some of my clients know I have autoimmune hypothyroidism that I got when I was a little bitty kid. But for the most part, I have been pretty healthy. And so when Chelsea first started this journey with Emma, my amazing niece, she would talk about this. And honestly, I just started doing it because I did see firsthand, because that's the kind of person I am. I got to see it. And sometimes with gut health, a lot of this is not seen. So I struggled with that at first. But I did see Emma go from always being sick. Chelsea is not exaggerating. I remember when she had both strands of flu and strep at the same time when she was like 1.5. Went from that and eczeema to like hardly ever being sick and no eczema. And so I got on the gut health bandwagon and started using a probiotic and magnesium as a result of seeing what happened with my niece, even though for me, I didn't identify a lot of the issues, but I can say taking that leap of faith for me, based on what I saw in my family, I now, because when I started, I had a newborn-ish and an 18-month-old. And so I was tired, but looking back, I can see a big difference in how I was less tired with 2 than I was with my first, Isaac. I also lost weight after 2 much faster than with Isaac. And I've just continued on the products since then. So I guess that's the next question. A lot of people know that probiotics are associated with gut health, but something I learned from Chelsea and just doing my own research over time. 2 weeks ago, we did a recovery series for our challenge, and we really talked about sleep and how important that is for recovery from working out in life. And when I was doing research for my own recovery years ago, that's when I discovered how important magnesium is. And so, Chelsea, speak to a little bit about what it is you can do, what products can you use to really improve that gut health? Or if you are just like me and you see it make a difference with someone else or listening to this and think, well, I want to try it. What would they begin to try? What helps your gut health?
That's a good question. I will speak to the magnesium part because that was a whole nother piece that I was uneducated on. And since then there are entire books written on just magnesium. The Miracle of Magnesium is actually an awesome book. I'm 38, so those are the kind of books I read now.
Yes.
But magnesium is another thing that a lot of doctors estimate up to 80% of us are walking around deficient in magnesium. And that is a mineral that is responsible for 150 chemical reactions daily in our body. And so if we're deficient in a basic mineral like that, then that supports liver function, nerve function, blood sugar levels, energy production. Obviously, it plays a huge role in regularity. If we're deficient in a mineral like that, our bodies literally cannot function at the level that they were intended to function because it doesn't have all the puzzle pieces. So magnesium is a huge one. I take that one every day. I used to be, like I said, I'm an open book, but I used to struggle with constipation on the daily, and I take magnesium now and I never struggle with that anymore. And I can't even tell you what that does to affect your mood, the way you feel and all that. But as far as finding products, I mean, when we started seeing the functional doctor, we have been the guinea pig for just about every probiotic out there. We started on $100 refrigerated probiotic for Emma, and we would cycle those out for about a year and just trying different ones. And we'd see a little bit of improvement, but nothing earth shattering. And the thing that I have found through the probiotic that we eventually landed on is it needs to have three things, in my opinion, for it to be truly effective, because there are a lot of probiotics out there. And this is the one we were using for a long time. We'd go to the natural health food store, $80 out of the refrigerated section. It's got like, 1,200 billion CFUs or whatever it is. And you think, well, this is the one. The ones that are refrigerated like that, I'm not saying they're a bad probiotic because they're high quality, but a lot of the times when they're refrigerated, why do they have to be refrigerated? Because they need to be kept at a specific temperature in order to work. So as soon as you ingest that, guess where all of the probiotics and the CFUs are going to be killed off? In your stomach acid before they can actually reach your small and large intestine, where they actually need to propagate and do the work. So finding a freeze-dried probiotic that can actually deliver to the place in your intestines where it needs to work is essential. Another piece that is essential for me is digestive enzymes. That's one of the things that's really missing from our American diet is eating the right kind of foods that give us the enzymes needed to break down and absorb nutrients from our foods. So finding something with a digestive enzyme is huge. And then the third piece, which was so crucial for myself and Emma, was fighting the Candida yeast. And that's another thing I want to encourage you to empower yourself and educating yourself on Candida yeast. So many of us, because of those things I shared earlier, have an overgrowth of Candida. And when you think of Candida, I mean, you think of yeast, like it's yeast in our bodies. All of us have a small amount of naturally occurring yeast to decompose us when we die. That's the purpose of it.
Right.
But because of all these things, it's gotten out of control. The only way for Candida to be eliminated is to have a natural antifungal that actually breaks through the hard outer coating and flushes it out of your system. So you can throw probiotics at it all day long, but it's not going to touch the Candida. So you need something that's actually going to flush the Candida out and replenish at the same time. We found a probiotic. This is the one that eventually ended up healing Emma from Plexus. It's called Probio 5. A friend of mine actually sent me a bottle of this years ago when she was struggling. And it was the one that gave her her skin back and gave her immunity back. And it contains all three of those things. So for me, as somebody who has run the gamut and looked at all of those things, that is the probiotic we will be on for the rest of our lives because it checks all three of those boxes for me. And that's part of the system that I started taking every day. I didn't share too much about my story, but when she was struggling, I was also going through all the mom things. I was struggling with chronic fatigue. I had intense sugar cravings, chronically bloated and constipated every day, over-the-counter sleep meds to sleep any kind of resemblance of a full night's sleep. And I knew something was off in my body. I've always been somebody who worked out on a regular basis. We eat clean. I felt like I was doing all the right things, but I just didn't feel like Chelsea anymore. I knew something was off in my body. And so I started taking the probiotics she was taking. I started taking a magnesium supplement that's part of that same combo, addressing my blood sugar. And the compounded effect of addressing those things truly gave me myself back and filled in so many of the gaps that I knew that were there. And it really has just been amazing. And I guess the thing I want to leave you guys with, and I love that this aligns so much with what Heather coaches on and teaches on, is be your own advocate. Because for years I watched our pediatrician, and this is not throwing shade on any pediatrician. We love ours and we still go. I listened to our pediatrician and I listened to my doctor tell me that I was normal. My blood work was within range. Her blood work was within range. It was normal to experience these things. And I want you to know that just because something is normal or just because something is common doesn't mean that it's normal. And that a lot of the things that we are experiencing, a lot of the symptoms that we're dealing with that we've just kind of deemed as, oh, this is 35. Oh, this is what it looks like to be 30, or this is adulting, doesn't always have to be. We have tools at our dispense. We have knowledge and education out there that we can use to be our own advocates to fill in some of these gaps and really just, be our best selves and educate ourselves on these things. So be empowered. If I'm a 38-year-old mama of 2 who has no semblance of a medical degree, I was a former elementary teacher. If I can educate myself, so can you. So just reach out to the tools. Heather does such an amazing job of providing tools in this community so that you can empower yourself, so that you can take these courses and run with it and live your best life moving forward.
Thank you, Chelsea. And you guys know that in general, at BTS, we don't, all of our dietitians and coaches, we all use supplements of some kind, whether it be protein powder, liquid IV, active, and, we run the gambit. We all use it. I personally use the same thing Chelsea does, the Plexus probiotic and magnesium, their blood sugar regulator. I've been doing it for 6 years now. And I can tell when I miss a day. So that is definitely an option. If you're interested more in gut health, you can reach out to me. And if I don't know an answer, I can put you in touch with Chelsea. And Chelsea's community, very much like the BTS community, includes nurses and doctors who, if you're like, I want to talk to somebody in the medical profession, she can hook you up with that too. But in general, like she said, education is what's important. And we just wanted to come on here and kind of talk about gut health beyond just the fad and the trend. And I definitely can tell that it's made a big difference in my life. And I know it's made a big difference in Chelsea and my niece's life. So it was a topic that when it came up on our, we emailed the clients and asked, hey, what do you guys want to hear about in the challenges? And this is one of them. I was excited to see that. And I thought, got to get Chelsea on because she does such a good job of breaking it down, I feel like, in layman's terms. So thank you guys. And thank you, Chelsea. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Wait, hold on.